Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Ojo, and I thank you all for joining me today. We'll be covering the topic of cultural humility and how it impacts our work in the field of applied behavior analysis. So let's go ahead and get started. Culture and diversity are vital pillars in the work that we do in ABA. And we work with a variety of families as well as interdisciplinary professions that have their own values and beliefs that are important to them. And before we can work with them, we really need to identify our own cultural identity and how what we believe in. So, in today's training, we're going to dive into our own cultural identity by using a cultural identity map and answering open ended questions that will allow us to really reflect and dig deep into our own potential biases, maybe uncover some of those. Um, it's really important for us to identify our biases so that we can be aware of them when we are met with families that have different beliefs than our own. And this way, we can assist them from a place of empathy and understanding when they do bring up certain behaviors that they may want to address that we may not have even considered them as important. Alrighty, so today we have some learning objectives. By the end of this training, you will understand culture and diversity and why they are important to your practice, have a completed cultural identity map, and discover components of yourself that you may not have realized are considered culture. And you will determine how you can assess your cultural responsiveness. All right, so before we go ahead and dive deep into our cultural humility and cultural identity, I'd like to take the time to go over the cultural terms that we use in ABA. And we see these terms quite often when speaking about diversity, so it's important that you understand the differences. So, to start with, we have culture. Culture is a cultivation of intersecting thoughts, language, actions, and characteristics that are learned, embodied, and transmitted from generation to generation. Now, it's important to remember culture is not just about race and ethnicity and religion. It can just be as simple as a family tradition or being part of a sports team, something like that. Cultural responsiveness is viewing differences as strengths, creating a safe learning environment, and promoting justice and equity in society. Now, cultural humility is a lifelong process of self reflection and self critique that does not require mastery of beliefs and behaviors pertaining to different cultures. Rather, it encourages to develop a respectful attitude toward diverse points of view. So, what's really important in cultural humility is that it is a lifelong process. You're not just going to acquire the knowledge and be done with it. You are going to continue to learn. So, on the flip side of that, we have cultural competency. Now, this definition is a little wordy, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. So, the ability of individuals to use academic, experiential, and interpersonal skills to increase their understanding and appreciation of cultural differences and similarities within, among, and between groups, which includes the individual's desire, willingness, and ability to improve systems and work closely with knowledgeable persons from the community to develop interventions and services that affirm and reflect the value of different cultures. So, cultural competency has mostly been overtaken by cultural humility, as the term of competency gives off the sense that this is something that can be acquired. It's completed with enough knowledge. Now, however, cultural humility, on the other hand, is a lifelong process, and it is used more now often to reflect that this is a journey and there's always going to be room to learn and to grow. And the last definition we have here is cultural awareness. This encompasses an individual's ability to examine their own cultural beliefs and values in relation to others and develop a level of awareness or understanding of how culture can shape behavior and interactions with others. So, all of these definitions are from Getz Eunice et al. 2022, their article titled Cultural Responsiveness Framework in BCBA Supervision. All right, I also want to point out some specific pieces in the BACB Ethics Code that reflect the importance of culture and diversity. So, one of our core principles, benefit others, This is actively identifying and addressing factors such as personal, financial, institutional, political, religious, or cultural that might lead to conflicts of interest, misuse of their position, and negative impacts of their professional activities. We also have one of our ethics standards 1.07, cultural responsiveness and diversity, which reads behavior analysts actively engage in professional development activities to acquire knowledge and skills related to the cultural responsiveness and diversity. They evaluate their own biases and ability to address the needs of individuals with diverse needs and backgrounds. So this really points to the information that we'll be covering today and the reasoning as to why it's so important for us to be aware of our culture and biases. And last but not least, we have our standard 4.07, incorporating and addressing diversity. During supervision and training, behavior analysts actively incorporate and address topics related to diversity. It's really so important that we are trained in this area because it will inevitably come up in our practice. All right, so here we have a little interactive activity in front of you. You have a handout of this cultural identity map, and you are each going to fill out each circle with the answer that you feel best fits you. So when you have completed your map, I want you to turn to someone next to you to compare your answers. I think it'll be really fun to see what you have in common and also where your cultures differ. And I'll give you some time to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so we have some common challenges that we find in our field, and it's that we often assume that everyone has the same culture and personal biases that we do. And so when we're working with individuals with different cultural backgrounds and values, we face the challenges of learning a new culture and the variables that are really important to them. I have a real world example on the next slide from when I first started working in ABA and where my naivety about culture led me to an assumption that we're all the same. Let's take a look. Okay, when I first started in ABA, I provided services to a Puerto Rican family, and I was in their home 5 days a week for 2 hours each, and it really allowed myself and the family to develop a trusting relationship. So each day, the mom would be cooking dinner for the children while I was there and would offer me some of their culture's food. And I usually would say yes, but there was this one day that I did not. And the mother became very offended. I told her, I'm not hungry. And she did not appreciate that response. So while my response of denying food is considered appropriate in my American culture, it was completely offensive to hers in her Puerto Rican culture. And I learned from that day forward to always just take the food that she offered me, even if it meant taking it home rather than eating it right away. So here you can see that my assumption that, food's just food, it doesn't mean anything other than that, was wrong. And in her Puerto Rican culture, to deny food is a sign of disrespect. And I did not realize that. So, how to address challenges, excuse me. How to address challenges. Be open and honest about your understanding of the culture, and ask open-ended questions to the families, to the interdisciplinary teams that you're working with, and really come at your questions with a sense of curiosity. You never want to sound judgmental. Ask clarifying questions if necessary as well. Do your research. Do your research on the culture, especially if you're starting with a family that's in a different culture than your own and you're going into their home. You really want to research arrival and home etiquette. Like, do they appreciate shoes off? Do they view handshakes as a sign of respect or disrespect? There are so many variables that you can really look into. Self-reflect. Self-reflection is vital when addressing challenges. Like we did this today with our cultural identity map, as well as on the next slide, I have some questions for us to do some self-reflection. And I'll also be providing a resource from the Wright 2019 article titled Cultural Humility in the Practice of Applied Behavior Analysis. And they have a table that's filled with questions to assess cultural humility from an individual as well as an institutional standpoint. So I think it's just vital that we do some self-reflection on ourselves. Lean on other professions. like as social work, they have a foundation of how to address cultural humility. ABA is still a fairly new field, and we do not have a firm foundation as others. We don't have as firm of a foundation as others, I should say. And when it comes to addressing cultural differences, but the field of social work is a great one to lean on. Because we both deliver social services and we're both guided by science. So their principles when dealing with cultural and diversity differences, very helpful. Read the BACB Ethics Code. It's a great resource to turn to. While some differences may arise that it cannot really answer fully, it can at least be a guide to see if you're going in the right direction or not. And you can always reach out to a mentor for assistance. And the last one is the cultural responsiveness supervision self-assessment. I'll also be providing this to you at the end of the training. It's a great way to assess cultural responsiveness and humility and self-reflection on your own biases and values and how they're being translated into your work. All right, cultural humility in practice. Here are just a couple of self-reflective questions that I came up with for you guys to take a look at and think about. How do you think your culture can impact and influence your relationship with others? How comfortable are you with diverse cultural backgrounds? How can you expand upon that comfort level? And speak about a time when cultural differences impacted your work with a family and or a client. I'm sure you have some. And that's going to be the conclusion of our training today. Culture and diversity, they are vital pieces of our work in ABA. It's a big part of our ethics code that we abide by to be open-minded and curate individualized care for each client in collaboration with the family and their values. You're going to take away the cultural identity map with you. You're going to remind yourself of your own culture when working with someone that you have a particularly tough time understanding. Remember your core values and ask them about theirs. And assess your cultural biases by using the Cultural Responsiveness Supervision Self-Assessment tool created by Getz Eunice et al. In 2022, as well as using the self-reflective questions in this presentation, as well as the Write 2019 article that I'll be providing. Here are just some of the references or all of the references that we have in this staff training. And if you ever have any follow-up questions, you can feel free to contact me at this email address right here. And thank you guys. This was a great training and I'm really happy that you got to enjoy it with me. Thanks.